To the August 11th, 2015 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commissioners are appointed by the Board of Selectmen to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town Bylaw governing the wetlands. As a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
John Kiernan.
Michael Blute.
Ingrid Beatty.
Arthur Doyle.
And so that members of the public are aware, we have a recorder here as part of the open meeting law, so we make a record. And we'd ask all those that address the commission to identify themselves, even if we know you, because we need to keep the record. First on the agenda is the semi-annual report from Milton Academy. But you have to tell us how many years you've been doing this.
Since 1997.
All right.
My name is Dennis Glenn. I'm the Director of Facilities at Milton Academy. My name is Brandon Fagan. I work for GEI. I'm a consultant supporting the remediation project at Milton Academy.
What can you tell us?
We're still maintaining groundwater quality out at the site. Got that? We basically have been tracking a couple of wells up by the facilities buildings that have had concentrations last year in the groundwater that were higher than normal, but still below the standard. We did test them in February again, and they were non-detect, so that was the only
Concentrations of what?
contaminants in the groundwater. So we track them to a method 1 standard. We're only held to what they call a method 2-3 standard. Method 1 is basically drinking water standard, or something equivalent to that. Method 2 is buildings constructed on groundwater, over that soil within 30 feet and 15 feet of the groundwater. So 30 feet of the building, 15 feet of the groundwater. And a method 3 is all groundwater in the state of Massachusetts, including wetlands, any other water resources. So the site cleanup standard.
Hydrocarbons or other stuff as well?
Hydrocarbons, correct, petroleum hydrocarbons. The original release was number 6 fuel oil. And the 6 fuel oil generally doesn't partition well into the groundwater in terms of contaminants, so that's a good thing. But unlike a gasoline that would have higher concentrations of what they call BTEX, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. So I have really nothing to report other than we've been maintaining the wetlands, kind of keeping everything cut down over the barriers. The gates seem to be working well. We've maintained the booms.
Maintained as in replaced?
We maintain them each time they get, every year we put new booms in to try and, if there's an event, we get sheen breakout from, like springtime, sometimes we get higher flows and we get localized breakout, as residual. We haven't seen it in a number of years, mostly because it's been 16 years since we put the wall in and there's really not much driver to push out any of the residual oil beyond the barrier into that O'Hare pond. The Academy's been maintaining the water level in the pond, some level, so it doesn't, we don't dry out,
Yeah,
nothing.
we came close to drying out,
You don't draw it out. Yeah.
so we fill it up.
Yeah, it's a
Weird
backfill
happened with all the
condition.
snow melt and everything this year?
Well, that was fine, but even before that I think it was last summer. I
Yeah,
think we
last
had
summer we had a drought.
We had a
so-
drought that we almost dried up there, so we filled the pond.
Backfill to maintain the booms, keep them from going into the mud, and then they get stuck down in the mud, the water level comes up, and then they don't perform.
Oh,
We
right.
have 2 different types. We have an absorbent boom that floats, and then we also have a curtain boom that stays on top as well. It floats, but they're designed in different methods.
How do you fill up the pond?
We have a well.
Oh,
It's right over on the lacrosse field,
Yeah,
right
it's,
right off of Brook Road. It's right on the edge of the road. It's more of a back pressure feed. Years ago, when we first had this happen, the pump was just a static pump and it would pump at a constant pressure. The pond was always being filled artificially because it was an overpressure. So it's like a pressure valve that said, okay, if I only need so much for irrigation, any residual pressure just dumps into the pond. About maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we switched it over to a variable frequency drive pump so that when irrigation comes on, the demand and flow is only fed by the pump to that pressure need. So basically what happens is in order to backfill the pond, we use the same piping system, but we just.
And we have a story pole in the pond to let us know the depth.
Right.
You talked about fluctuation last year. Is there a reasonable range, and it's all underneath the acceptable limit, is there a reasonable range of fluctuation? And does the fluctuation tell you something's going on, or is it just expected variation over time?
It's expected variation. I mean, we're really looking for NAPL, non-aqueous phase liquid, which is free phase, which we don't generally see in any of our outlier wells. But if one of the things we also do is just as an indicator, we monitor the groundwater quality out on the edges. We monitor it down gradient all the way around, but we monitor on the edges as well. So if we see anything, there was product in a lot of these areas before we even started, but, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, the pipe, the sampler going down the well and having some kind of, any kind of a sheen or anything that breaks loose from contact with an old residual piece of NAPL, because you're monitoring at very low levels at parts per billion. You know, I'm sorry, parts per billion, you know, opposed to milligrams per liter, which would be a, you know, a higher concentration. So, you know, again, everything we're working through is what's called a Massachusetts contingency plan, and then a standard set by it. We did do originally back in the 90s a method 3 risk assessment, but we've always been kind of tracking the site in terms of its performance and boundaries to a more conservative level, just because it makes it easier to have a simple metric that somebody can look at and say, here's a number that works for you.
Yeah, we're not collecting any product.
Right, we've been
You
down,
know,
we've
When I first came here 18 years ago,
You used to run the machinery on the stuff you pulled out of there.
we were collecting about 200 gallons a month.
yeah, it was
I wasn't
pretty
kidding.
Really?
Oh, yeah. What we're finding now in the industry is, it's not what we originally thought, you know, when we look at NAPL in terms of physical recovery, we're now realizing that a lot of the mass in NAPL, which is petroleum hydrocarbons, is degradative over time, so that you're actually getting mass removal just by proxy of the fact that time is happening with respect to the fuel oils, and that mass is fairly significant. We have a division in Texas that's, you know, basically working with EPA and a lot of the federal programs that are showing that mass, you know, depreciation on a lot of sites that wasn't originally factored in terms of the remediation models for a lot of remediation sites that are being used across the country. It was just not factored in. DEP in Massachusetts just passed white papers, through a process of white papers, and has the new LNAPL guidance that came out this year. So, and it's really progressive in terms of leading the country, you know, in terms of NAPL management, and they're giving us a presentation next month if you're interested.
Not that interested,
It's
thank
only
you.
it's only $900 and 2 days of class, so.
But just so the public knows, who's listening, this all began because of an oil tank.
Two 20,000
Fuel
gallon,
tank, right?
number 2
10
fuel.
10,000, I think.
All right, 20,000 total, 2 10,000-gallon tanks leaked they found it in the 1970s. And so they pulled the tanks, they did tank fitness testing, pulled the tanks out, and this has been the legacy, so. They're switched over to, you know, your natural gas, and they have a swing boiler
Yeah,
that works
we-
off of fuel.
After that, 2 tanks, we built an oil tank building, put 2 10,000-gallon tanks in there. We've since converted our 350 horse boilers to natural gas, with one that's oil gas, and we've kept one 10,000-gallon tank, and we've used the other section as a generator, an emergency generator, 350 kW generator that we power 3 dormitories and a kitchen in our facilities building for an emergency. So it sort of works out. We made use of the space where the 10,000-gallon tank we pulled out, and we still have one 10,000-gallon tank that we use with number 2 oil. So we're completely away from the number 6.
Now, how is the population of snapping turtles in the pond? I didn't see any of the
Oh,
little
we see
turtles.
them.
Did you see them this spring? 'Cause
Yeah,
I
we did,
not.
yeah. We actually had to turn around one because he got into the facilities building.
Okay. One of the mothers
Live
laying
there
the
too.
eggs, or one of the
Wonder
little
what that
ones?
hurt.
One of the big ones,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Got
would
all
be
the way
she.
into our paint shop.
How about the sedimentation basin at the corner of the tennis courts?
They maintain it to the story pole, and they actually did clean outs in the
Yeah,
spring.
we
This-
weekly.
this year it was clean?
Yeah, we weekly maintain that whole site out there.
There's some notes in the reference to the documents, is the check, it's one of the checks for the weekly and the monthlies. So it is, they check it weekly for its reference. you know.
And the catch basins before, they used to fill up with sand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, by the side of the tennis courts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you, there's
What
like,
page are you on?
any one of the weekly O&M reports, it says O'Hare Sediment Pond Basin, northwest corner of tennis courts. You know, is clean out required? No. If no, 20 inches between top of sediment and the threshold marker. It says 12 inches as an example for this report. So this was your September 26, 2014. This is, starting from last year to go to this year.
Okay.
So we actually have two reports that, you have the one that we just sent you, and then the February 3rd report. But if you go to any one of the O&M sections, it's in this report, it's, for February, it's Operation Appendix D. Appendix D has all the maintenance logs that are done on a weekly basis, and then there's also a monthly report. And then, so if it says, is it required, then they will go out and clean it out.
Fair enough. Any other questions? Members of the public, the butters, any questions, comments, concerns? As always, we thank you very much for
Thank you.
Thank you.
coming in.
Just as a note, Dennis is retiring.
What? Are you really?
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
his last meeting.
Yeah, last meeting.
Will you come back as sort of a guest,
He'll be a Milton renter.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you.
courtesy over the years.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at number 2, which is the abbreviated Notice of Intent, 0 Central Avenue. That's the town of Milton. They have, in writing, requested a continuance of that application. That's the demolition application. And we have agreed, I guess we can agree to agree. No, I guess that's talking outside. I thought there was a question. So is everybody in conformance with that? They have requested in writing, and I suggest that we grant the continuance.
When do they expect to appear before us?
At our next meeting, which is, what's the date in September?
The 15th of September.
The 15th of September.
15. Thanks, John. Thanks, Kathy.
Next on the agenda, number 3, request for determination of...
Just a related question. Are we hopeful for a resolution at that meeting?
Yes,
Because we've had ad infinitum
Correct.
continuances by the town
correct.
as well as the other party.
That's correct. And you're right, so that the public knows, that's the demolition permit for the applicant for the Hendry's project, 131 Elliott Street, was granted back in April. But the applicant in that case is now trying to coordinate with the town so that the demolition can take place at the same time. And we are all hopeful
Good.
that will be resolved
Yes.
so that it can be done contemporaneously and in coordination one with the other.
Good. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability. This is DCR Blue Hills Ski Area on Hillside Street. Do we do have that, all right. Good evening, welcome, and I think you have to use a microphone. Ed,
Why don't
if
we
you
bring
can-
that all down?
If you can take that microphone right there at the end of the table, you can keep it with you.
All right.
That's great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Jackson. I'm with CDI McGuire. I'm representing DCR on the Blue Hills Pump House project.
All right, we have met, and actually for the public, we had a public meeting on Saturday. We spent some time at the ski slope, and Jim was kind enough to kind of walk us through. This is a new, well, why don't you tell us what it is, so that the
Okay.
public knows.
What it is at the Blue Hills ski area, they would like to build a new pump house. It'd be a building about 19 feet by 29 feet that will house pumps for their snowmaking system to pump water up the mountain and serve the snowmaking system. So it includes the pump house, a new electrical transformer, and a new 12-inch water line that will run from the pump house, and it'll run back to the parking lots. And really hard to see from here, but it'll run on DCR property, but through the parking lots, but along Route 138, and tie in about 1,200 feet to the north of the property.
All right, and can you go back to the first picture and tell us whether or not that design shows the movement that we discussed of the pump house?
Yes, we did. What we did is we shifted the pump house about 25 feet to the north and then rotated it some to the east to kind of follow the contours of the hill there. And doing that allowed us to avoid any impacts to these two large oak trees they weren't in the footprint, but they were very close enough where they would have been impacted by the construction, by the excavation.
Right, and again, for the public, that's the result of our meeting on Saturday, because we were out there and saw that there was some pretty large trees, mature trees that we wanted to save, and the folks at the ski slope entity actually agreed, and DCR is in agreement, to move the building to save the trees. And with respect to, can you just trace, again, for the public, the path of the water line?
And just before you do that, just show where, like, the bunny slope is in relation to that, so people can see where it's going. I believe the bunny slope is up here and the,
Yeah, the bunny slope will
Right
be
in
coming
here.
down. Yeah, this is right at the base of the mountain. So the bunny slope's here. There's a ski lift that runs from here. On the page, it's going down, but it's actually, up the hill.
The gray area at the top is the parking lot.
Yes, this is the parking.
And 138 would be where?
On the top of the drawing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the water line will be, will run from the proposed pump house down the hill to the parking lot, and then just kind of follow the edge of the parking lot, and then across a grassed area, and then across the north parking lot, and then where it will tie into an existing 16-inch water line.
And could you point out the location of the Trailside Museum?
Yeah, it's in,
The right?
yeah, it's right in this area here.
Now, this is an RDA, a request for determination of applicability. And to be honest with you, I think you're beyond our jurisdiction, although, the pipeline eventually will get there. So I compliment DCR and the ski slope group for coming to us. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
now, I just note that the pipeline is well outside of the trail side's native plant garden that's been there for about 3 years. And we looked at that on Saturday. And there is a lawn area between the garden and the actual roadway. So there's plenty of room to go through just that grassy section. So the plants won't be impacted.
With respect to trenching of the water line, you're going down, what, 4 feet?
Be about 5 feet to the bottom.
5 feet, all right. And at the time, when you are within our jurisdiction, we want to just make sure that we've got the, our regular protection devices in place, the hay bales and whatnot.
Yes.
Construction-wise, do you intend to trench and fill the same day?
Yes, yeah, they'd work their way along, because it is a fairly active public area, so they're not gonna wanna leave a long section open and exposed. They will close up at the end of the night.
Okay,
Yeah, they'll put pipe in and backfill as they go along.
all right. And in terms of a staging area, one of our boilerplate conditions is to keep the equipment, the power equipment, the hydraulic equipment, outside of our buffer zone, which is 100 feet from the resource area. I think that'll be easy for you because of the
Yes,
parking.
it should be
parking
fine,
lot.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Now, do you want to be operational early December, or by December 1?
Yeah, ideally, December 1st would be in operation.
Any questions from abutters, members of the public? Hearing none, I entertain a motion for a negative determination with our regular conditions, our boilerplate conditions to protect the resource area.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Done. Thank you very much, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Next on the agenda, number 4, notice of intent at 5 Hurlcroft Road. Anybody appearing for 5 Hurlcroft Road?
Approve that on the sidewalk.
I know.
Okay.
I know. We doubled up this month, so a lot of what's on the agenda tonight, we actually considered at a public meeting, which was, properly publicized, and we actually visited Hurlcroft, 5 Hurlcroft Street, it's right on the corner of Squantum and Hurlcroft, before you get on the expressway. And it's an issue of whether or not they can put in a back deck, and we determined that it was sufficiently far from the resource area. And we actually asked for some assistance because, did we determine if that's town land right next to the Gulliver's Creek?
Just DCR land.
DCR.
DCR land, all right. And the homeowner, as a courtesy, said that they would assist us in pulling out some of the debris. Not their problem, it's not their land, they didn't put it there, and they're relatively new residents of Milton. But just as a courtesy to the town, they agreed to try to pull some of that debris out of there, which protects the wildlife around the creek. It's pretty important that it not fall into the creek, so I think we've got a good new citizen in Milton. And we did issue the approval for that permit. So,
John, do we want to do something with DCR about the erosion problem?
Right.
yeah,
On
right,
their
that's
property?
true. Why don't you state for the public what we decided to do with it?
The outflow area into Gulliver Creek has significant erosion that's impacting the bank. You can see that it's been deteriorating over time. And that not only brings material down into the waterway with resulting impact, but it's going to ultimately pull into that driveway, which is right on the edge of the bank. So anything that we can do to mitigate that proactively would be great with the DCR.
DCR and also, I
Maybe
think we
the
tried Ian Cook with the Pleasant Valley Watershed
That's okay
Association.
too, yeah.
Does anybody want to volunteer to talk to Ian Cook? I think that would be a good, and I don't know who the appropriate contact person would be at DCR.
I'd be happy to follow up on it.
All right. Kathy, do you know the primary contact at DCR? They seem to have divisions.
Yeah, who took Kathy down, that's.
Well, Ian would know, so we can talk to
Ian
Ian
would
and
know.
take
Yeah,
it that
Kathy
way.
Garnett retired, is that right?
Yes.
She did.
Oh,
okay.
she did.
Yeah.
All right, she's very good. All right, that's good follow-up. Anything else on 5 Hillcroft? No. All right, next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability 600 Canton Avenue. Welcome.
Okay, good evening. My name is Matt Weber. I'm with Beals Associates. We've been working with Winter Valley residences, basically helping them out with a pavement upgrade project. Sure. So again, Matt Weber, Beals Associates. We've been working with Winter Valley residences on some planning and design for pavement upgrades at their property here in Milton. Basically, the pavement out there, it's pretty old. It's in pretty rough shape. So the plan is to repave all the driveways and parking areas throughout the entire site. But the reason I'm here tonight and the reason we filed the RDA is a small portion of the work will fall inside the 100-foot buffer zone to a wetland to the north. So it's about 3,800 square feet of existing pavement that we're going to replace. And then,
Can you indicate on the map where Canton Ave is and where the,
sure, Canton Ave is right here. And then this is the main driveway up to the site. And then this area right here is the area in question inside the buffer zone. Here's some photos just to kind of give you a sense. Basically, the problem is, obviously, the pavement is in rough shape. And we also have some erosion coming down the slope here. So that photo on the right really shows it. There's essentially no stormwater management over here. The water just kind of sheet flows right off the pavement. So what we're going to try to do is basically, upgrade the pavement, add some granite curbing, and then basically install a stone plunge pool to basically take the stormwater runoff and then dissipate it so that we not only fix the problem now, but prevent more erosion down the road. And again, it's no increase to the impervious area within the buffer zone. And we're kind of seeing it as a repair to an existing condition, which is why we filed the RDA rather than NOI.
Can you do the second map again? This grassy area that we're looking at,
Yeah.
is it at the bottom of that slope, like in front of that car? Is that where the wetland area is that you're referring to?
Yeah, the wetland would be down here, coming down the slope.
And
then this photo.
we walked that
is
on
back to
Saturday.
the left.
We did walk that on Saturday, last Saturday.
Okay.
And on the other side is Highland Street, and to the left down there, that's where Canton Ave is.
So, yeah, right back here would be Canton Ave.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, we did have some concerns that we'd like to discuss with you and have you address them. I guess the first one is that we weren't particularly comfortable with the wetlands delineation, and we didn't have any soils analysis. We went by the flags. The skunk cabbage, which I think you'll agree is a wetlands indicator, was pretty prolific there, and we couldn't quite figure out how the flags were set. So we'd actually like to go back and walk it with you, or whomever your wetland scientist is. We were astounded at the amount of trash in the wetlands. I mean, it was shocking. Now, I understand that it's been there probably a long time, but it's pretty bad. And there may be a way that, I mean, as the landowner, they would be responsible, the organization would be responsible for cleaning it. But there might be some mechanism by which you could get together with the high school. I know the kids have community projects, community service that they have to do. Might be a great way to get the people at Winter Valley together with the high school kids and putting their heads and bodies together. It might be a benefit to the town to clean it. It definitely needs to be cleaned up.
The tires and other debris are very significant, heavy debris. Also, John, the dumpsters are very proximate
Right.
to the wetland area. And maybe one of the things that we have to take a look at is their potential relocation. Because the spillage from those is obviously going down the hill and into the wetland
Right.
areas. Wind, whatever.
And that might be the source of it. I mean, it doesn't look like a
I don't think
a
the
gathering
tires
spot.
came out of there, but.
I don't know how
And
the
those
tires go.
dumpsters, in the past, they were further away from that buffer line. They were actually moved, kind of due to the age of the pavement. The trucks had trouble getting down to where they were before, so we do plan on moving those further back.
All right.
By back, you mean toward the building? Or,
Right. More back in this area here.
On the map, one of the questions we had, or that I had actually, was this catch basin seems to be A, in the wrong place, and B, not properly designated on your site map. Because on the site map, it shows it being outside the parking area, when actually it's inside the parking area, which you can see right here. And I'm concerned that, A, it's gonna pick up all of the sheet flow, maybe, because the way the elevation works, I'm not sure it's catching the water as it's designed to do. If it were to catch the water as it's designed to do, it's probably catching water with a lot of hydrocarbons in it. And this picture frightens us. We don't know where this pipe is coming from, and this pipe is right where the picture is that you showed us. And are you familiar with the pipe? It's discharging right into the wetlands.
Okay.
If you flip it around, you can probably see, because it's the same, it's the right-hand picture.
You can actually see it in the photo, the white dot
Oh, yeah, you can.
in front of the car, in the shadow.
Right there.
Yep,
Yeah.
right there, that's it. That's pretty much where you're gonna put your punch pool. And it's,
Yeah, I can't quite tell what that is.
well, it's this.
Well, it's
We'll
this,
give you a
you can
copy of
see.
this if you haven't seen it.
There you go.
before.
Okay, yeah, we can,
Identify where it's coming from,
right, yeah, we can connect that back.
because that's pouring right into the wetlands. And we don't know what is pouring into the wetlands, or
Sure.
if it's been treated, or whether it needs to be treated. I don't know if it's roof runoff, or if it's probably driveway runoff. And if I were to guess, I'm looking at a catch basin here.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's where it goes, but I'm sure you engineers can figure it out.
Sure, yeah, we'll locate that and figure out where it's coming from.
that entire section of the drawing seems to be inaccurate. In addition to what Chair has pointed out, is an indication of 2 handicap spaces.
I believe
Yeah,
that's
and-
proposed.
These are proposed?
I believe,
Okay.
yeah,
Just a change in striping, not a change in pavement.
right.
So there'll be additional space. Okay, I see how you could do that. I don't know what the hash marked area is because I couldn't see that on the sidewalk. Is that supposed to be
I
a
think, yeah, that would be.
zone to help with handicapped access?
Oh, that's an
right, that
ADA
would be the
requirement.
space in between.
Right, just wanted to confirm that. But I also want to go back to the dumpsters. Oftentimes, areas are protected by a stockade fence being in back of dumpsters, and there was nothing there whatsoever to protect the wetland or the general environment. And I understand the trucks have to come in and lift those, empty them, and so on down the line.
Right.
But there can be at least an L-shaped stockading of those, one section near the wetland area and one section to the other side of it. So maybe that's one thing that we can consider as well.
Your proposal
There's
is
the
to
movement
relocate
of
them,
them.
though. Their
Yeah.
proposal is to put them someplace else.
I understand, but it's not going to be that far away.
Right. Oh, okay.
It's just
So,
shifting it.
if they were outside of the buffer zone, would you still have concerns about the stockade fencing?
Well, we'd have to see.
Okay.
The one comment I have is the flagging in the field and the drawing that represents the flagging don't jive. The alignment of the flags don't align with what has been drawn on the drawing.
So there were 2 sets of lines. Basically, we went out there and flagged what we thought to be the wetland line.
Sure.
And then we brought in the DEP line from MassGIS.
Right.
That was a more conservative line, so we went actually with that line. And that's the one you see here. So basically, if I had
I'm
done
sorry,
the-
which one?
The DEP.
The
this,
straight,
this line here, so you're seeing a 25-foot and then a 100-foot buffer from this line. So essentially, if I had drawn a 100-foot buffer from the flags that you guys saw in the field, it would be further back towards the wetlands. So we took a more conservative approach. But
well, we were trying to match flags, and they don't match.
They don't match.
Right.
They don't match. I mean, we'll have like one here, and one here, and it's shown on the map as a straight line.
And wetland
But we're
flag-
watching the flags.
And wetland flag 1 is inside the skunk cabbage.
and were they all the same series? I know sometimes
They
you'll see
appeared to
the-
be.
Okay.
We didn't see two, I didn't see two series. We just saw a single series.
Okay.
I couldn't, if you go towards Canton Avenue, on the Highland Street side, there were other orange flags, but I didn't climb over the fence to see if it was a different series. Sometimes you can tell just from the handwriting.
Right.
I
Right.
couldn't tell. But
Yeah,
it
that's-
was off property, so it wasn't significant at that time, and it was
Sure.
quite a ways away. But
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. But we could certainly walk it with you guys again and confirm that.
all right, that would be good. And
Yeah.
my gut reaction to this is a significantly eroded area, and we've got discharge into the wetlands. So my inclination, you can talk me out of it, would be to issue a positive determination and require a notice of intent, because you've got some serious implications to the wetlands here. In terms
Sure.
of where
So-
that water is going, where it's coming from. The plunge pool is a great idea.
Yeah.
We support that. And we understand that the macadam has to be replaced, but we've got issues as to how do you protect the wetlands while you're installing the next layer of macadam.
Matt, there's also pretty severe erosion and a significant amount of brush that has been placed over the erosion, which
Oh, right.
appears to be a possible attempt to minimize future erosion, but it doesn't seem to be working at all. So one of the things that some of us will want to have addressed is something that's a little bit more substantial than what at least I read here in terms of stabilization of that eroding bank, the removal of what's been put there as an attempt to slow down the erosion, and what it would take in order to preserve that bank. Because you've got a parking lot right essentially at the edge of that bank.
Right.
And if that continues to erode, the parking lot's gonna tumble in after it.
Right, so our thought is so replacing the pavement,
I saw the
adding the
curbs.
curb,
Right,
that'll direct all the water to that stone-lined punch pool, and that would prevent any future erosion. So we'd fix the pavement that's out there now, and then we'd prevent it in the future. So that is part of the plan.
But you're not proposing to do anything to the bank?
We wouldn't go down the bank, and we're trying to minimize the amount that we have to.
bank needs to be cleaned out, and aside from a stormwater runoff, you're gonna have rain, snow
Sure.
continuing to erode it, so.
Yeah,
that's-
cleaning out everything you've seen in there, that's certainly in the cards.
You see, have you seen this picture? I assume you've been to the site, but that's a wall of debris that's clearly been placed there. Especially if you're on the downside, standing in the wetlands, looking back up the hill, it looks like a pretty significant barrier.
Right, and we could certainly get that out of there.
Yeah, there's also grass cuttings that have been there, it looks like, for years. And they're on the slope, and they feel like they're a foot or 2 feet thick of grass cuttings. So that's also degrading the
They're
slope.
also up toward the building, there's a second pile
Yeah.
of debris and grass cuttings up there.
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be the negative determination on the RDA with certainly the added requirements that we do the things that you guys are hoping for. But it's up to you guys.
My view is that that's one of the worst cases of debris in the wetlands that I've seen in 23 years. That's bad. So my preference, and I speak only for myself, but my preference would be.
No, I agree with you, John.
Notice of intent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anybody have other thoughts? I mean, I'm open for discussion. Unless any members of the public or about it?
Sorry, one quick question. So you talked about a topping slab over the existing macadam rather than a remove, because it is deteriorated, but you're just thinking you're topping it? Or you're thinking you're gonna pull it out and put down a new bed layer?
We would pull out the pavement,
You would pull out the pavement?
right.
Okay,
and
so you're taking it
completely
down to
repave.
gravel, or
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to make sure you weren't topping it. It's eventually gonna get broken up and damaged, especially with
Yeah.
dumpster trucks driving over it.
Yeah, no, that's significant enough. We're gonna go right down to the gravel.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Abutters or members, yes, ma'am, come forward, please.
Is there a plan?
Come forward and identify yourself. or-
Susan Fuchs, and I'm in a butter to Winter Valley. I live on Holmes Lane. Is there a plan to expand parking spaces in addition to the existing spaces that are there now?
None within the buffer zone here,
And
where we're
in
talking
any
about.
area while you're doing paving?
I believe there are,
I'm Sharon Williams, the property manager at Winter Valley. We are talking about trying to possibly add some spaces at Building 1, not Building 2, which is what abuts Holmes Lane. There are
Which one? Can you help us out? Just
Building 1 is the first building on the left.
on the left, okay.
On the left, the one where all the damage is, and I agree with you about the trash. I was down there the other day. And not to say that some of it hasn't been from previous years. I did notice that our landscaper's throwing things down there, but the trash has only been since we moved the dumpsters, which was before the snow started, because we couldn't get this work done last year. We didn't have time. By the time we figured out what to do, there wasn't enough time to get the bids in. And we had to move the dumpsters because the area was eroding. So when we moved them up, it obviously impacts right there. The dumpsters have always been down closer to the shop area, which is the basement of that first building.
And what about the question about whether or not you're expanding parking spaces?
Possibly, we're trying to get a few more spaces in around Building 1, but not.
Where is that? I'm not sure where that
The
is.
red circle?
up here, Sharon, on the left.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
does that mean up here?
Well,
Here,
you back up to Building 2, it's the building directly across the street.
So here's Canton Ave. So it'd be this building up here as you come up the driveway.
So where are the parking spots that are behind my house?
These are probably going to be
So
additional.
there's no.
Your house.
Oh, this is additional.
There's no
That's my
intent
guess,
to
yeah.
expand the
No.
parking.
John.
I know that at one time,
Oh, yes.
we didn't receive any notice and they added parking spaces in that area.
Where's the-
And when I
where's
went
Holmes
to
Lane?
DPW and
Here's
saw
the-
that they were gonna expand and put more
The
parking
pool is,
spaces
here's the
in.
cliff,
That kind of seems,
gradations, here's the PCR
contradictory
line.
to what your concerns are about erosion
It's the
and
existing
the
parking lot that you
wetlands
saw.
area.
You're right, but we're subject to a pretty limited jurisdiction, so we have to measure 100 feet from the resource area, or if it's a perennial stream or a river, it's 200 feet. In this case, it's 100 feet, so our jurisdiction is clearly delineated. And I know exactly what you're saying, but to be honest with you, it looks like, am I correct that there are additional parking spots going in here, the darker colored area? This is building 1, so if you're going up the hill from Canton Avenue, it's on the left.
Yeah.
And am I correct, this area here, the darkened area, that's
Yes.
additional parking?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. Did that, you probably can't see that. You can come up and take a look at it if you want. And Matt, you might be able to explain it better than I. That's hard to, well, no, it's not when you're up close, but this is building 1.
Well, just let me get oriented. Where's Canton Avenue?
Down here.
Back here.
You go up the hill, that's on the left.
If this map helps, this spot right here is right here.
In that area there. I thought I saw additional parking spots in 2 or 3 different places on the plan at the DPW. This doesn't look exactly the same, but.
Well, this is only building 1.
Right.
So we're not, on this map, we're not looking at building 2, which is closer to you.
Yeah.
Right, so you're not concerned with that?
I'm always concerned with it, but it's beyond our jurisdiction.
No, I understand that, and we're only lucky that you do have some jurisdiction, because otherwise we wouldn't know they were planning to expand parking spaces. We don't get any notice of that.
But we're not expanding in that area, in building 2, we're not expanding in that area. And we're not even doing building 2 this year, we'll do that probably next year or the following year.
So what I saw on that plan isn't going to happen?
I don't know what plan you saw, but we're not expanding in building 2 that I know of.
You know what parking spaces I'm talking about that were added in the last,
Well, I've been here for 16 years and they were there before that, so it might have been 20 years ago. And so-
no, it's been less than that they were added behind, when you first come up into Winter
I know what you
Valley
mean,
on the
because
right.
we've talked about it before, but I was there I started in 99.
Well, I've been
and-
here since 75.
No, I just mean they
so-
haven't been added since I've been there, so I don't know what happened prior to.
No, they haven't. You were
Okay,
there.
all right.
Can you just orient me? We were on the other side of this diagram when you were looking at it, and if you come up, if this is Canton Avenue here and you come up the driveway,
Right.
building 1 is over here. That's where
I know,
that's where we are.
that's where your
You live
concern
over
is.
here somewhere?
I live on Holmes Lane, so I live right here.
All right. So you're talking about this parking area, not this one.
Exactly, and I thought when I looked at the DPW plan, that I know they were adding parking spaces in 2 or 3 different areas, I thought, which is troubling from what I'm hearing about.
Again, we're concerned with the wetlands,
I-
we're
I-
concerned with the town, but our jurisdiction is limited.
I understand that. So we don't get any notice at all in the parking spaces.
The parking spaces that we're working on, I don't believe affected any of the residents. But I do know that Tyler sent out a letter on, Tyler is the gentleman I've been working with through deals. And I believe he sent out a letter's notice,
notice
So-
wasn't, there was a problem with the notice, so it had to be reissued. And as a matter of fact, I just got the notice of the meeting today at the post office. And I know that there are neighbors that are away, who probably haven't received notice. So I thought it was peculiar to get a notice the day of the meeting. In fact, I called Kathy to see if the meeting had been changed, because the notice wasn't really very timely.
All right, well, yes, sir, you have a
I
comment?
just wanted to clarify that, I don't know how pertinent it is, but it was just that.
Could you introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, I'm Frank O'Gilburn, I'm in a butter on the Highland Street side. I live on 75 Highland Street, and I'm a relatively new resident to Milton myself. But just to that effect, I called the number, the conservation number that they had provided in the first notice, and it was wrong, it was out of ours somewhere.
Hey,
That's why-
close enough, right?
The guy was good enough to say it was the wrong number, and he explained that they would be sending notice out again, so the date didn't change, it was other means, it's just the number. And,
All right.
and I just had, may I ask a question, are you through, are you still on the floor? Oh. And I'm a little confused by that map, I know it's all about the wetlands, my property is closer to that, frog pond on the other side there. Is there gonna be any particular effect to the level of that water or that area at all?
To the frog pond?
Yes.
No.
No, none of the drainage patterns will change.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Keegan. I live on Canton Ave, the piece that is a private lane that abuts to the back of the other buildings. And I was just curious, I would like to know if there's any plan to remove any trees as part of this improved pavement?
No.
No. And are you adding any spots to the other buildings aside from one? You only mentioned number 2. I suppose that's not an environmental issue.
We're not working on the other buildings this year, so I don't,
I just,
I'm
as
not
part
sure
of
what's
this
gonna happen in
project.
the future, not as part of this project.
Thank you.
All right, all questions asked and answered? All right, any other questions? I mean, my suggestion would be to, Mike, you
I agree
got
with
a
you.
question?
No, I don't have a question. I was going to say that I agree with you that.
This requires a notice of
Yeah,
intent?
notice of intent.
All right. And we won't slow you down. I mean, we're not doing that, make you jump through hoops, but I think it's appropriate that we protect the wetlands in that fashion, and that's what the notice of intent is designed to do.
Oop, one sec.
And I think you were here when we were discussing, our next meeting is September 15th. Is that something you could put together in sufficient time so we could consider it on the 15th?
Yes.
All right, now, what that leaves a little bit open is, we want to go back and look at the wetland flags with your wetland scientist.
Yeah.
We could do it, we've already had a site walk in August. If there were an emergency, we could have another meeting, but our regular course is to have one meeting here at Town Hall and then a second meeting during the month in the field. Does that fit with your construction plan if we did it after the 15th?
We were hoping to be done with construction by October. So, sorry, what date do you think the site
If
walk
you-
would happen?
Well, typically, we do the site walk after the public meeting in
Mhm.
Town Hall. This month, we reversed it. But we're a pretty friendly group, and if you need to advance your construction plan, and it seems like a good project, as long as it's done correctly to protect the wetlands,
Yeah.
then we could do a site walk earlier than that to speed it up. But we need to see the wetlands. So I don't know how fast you can get out there, and did you do soil sampling? Or is it just, I don't know how you did it, to be honest with you.
I believe our guy that went out there, he went out with an auger and looked at the soil, looked at the plants.
Can you have that wetland scientist, and we could meet on we typically meet on a Saturday morning.
Sure.
It wants to be on the agenda for the 15th, all those documents will have to be submitted by September 2nd.
Okay. Second?
Yeah, we have to go to the newspaper for the notice of intent, and the butters have to be re-notified, which is a whole new filing.
Okay. Okay. So the second, you'd have to have the documentation in place.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
That's easy, but we don't want to slow you down by having a site walk after the
Right.
15th, so we can do it before. it really is up to you. We do it on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock we start, and you tell us when you can get your scientists here, and we can figure out which Saturday we could do it on.
Yeah, yeah, we could do it.
Today's the 11th.
Well, we couldn't do, the 5th is Labor Day weekend, which might be tough. So the next is the 12th. That's the Saturday before our meeting, the 12th.
We could do that, or we could back it up into August, before Labor Day. If you're not available, or if people aren't available, that's okay.
I'm not available.
I could do the 12th of September. I think I probably won't be able to.
12th, my daughter is getting married.
Congratulations.
Well, I want to go on the sidewalk.
Change the time, right?
Locally, right?
Bad kids.
At the house.
Oh, good.
I'll be mowing the lawn. So
Well,
if we
what
could
about
do
the
it-
Saturday after? We could do it the very next Saturday. That's just 5 days later. That's the 19th. You want to do that?
Yeah,
It-
if that's
I
the
mean,
first
it's
day, we
okay
can
with
do
me,
it.
but I could do it in August, if anybody else can. You're not available. Anybody else?
I'm
Can't
generally
either.
available.
You what?
I can't either.
I'm generally available.
Yeah. Arthur?
I'm generally available.
The site walk doesn't have to be, we don't have to vote on it, we can report as a committee. We could do it as a committee and then report to the
Committee as a
commission
whole.
on the 15th.
Sure.
Okay, we do that?
Are we gonna have a revised plan on the flaggings, or?
Yes,
We will need,
Till it's flagged, there's no.
we need that by the
sidewalk.
2nd,
Yeah.
right, right.
So that's what we need to find out, if they can flag.
I think you're looking at the 19th instead. I mean, to get the documents in.
So if we were to go to that September 15th meeting and then do a site walk afterwards, and you guys found that you didn't agree with the wetland line, we'd probably be pushed back
Yep.
again to the next meeting, more
Well,
into October.
that's technically true, but in all honesty, as long as you're not within the 25 feet, and we have enough protections in place to protect the wetlands during the construction project. The reason we're so insistent upon setting the line properly is that if you were to come back a year or 2 or 3 years from now and, want to put in a McDonald's drive-through on the way up your driveway, we'd be stuck with that line. So it's not necessarily for this project, but we tend to be very careful about where the line is placed for other potential projects. And I know Winter Valley's not going to put in a McDonald's drive-through. But that's why we're so insistent upon it. But if we approve the notice of intent on the 15th of September,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that the placement of the wetland line would change that.
Right.
So I think it'd be safe.
The general direction of what you're proposing, I don't think will be affected by the wetland line. We're all in agreement that what you're proposing is within the jurisdiction, and I believe that the wetland line is effectively more than 25 feet away from the zone, the area of construction. So the delineation of the wetland line is, it's relevant to defining where the line is. It's not really relevant to modifying the project, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you should be able to run full speed ahead with the design for the project. Let us agree on what the delineation is, and then everything will come, hopefully everything will come together.
Okay.
That make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We agree that it's a minimum of 25 feet, so beyond that, it's,
It's 100
Correct.
feet, but it's open to discretion in terms of the impact.
right.
And you're not really enlarging the area of impact, you're just improving the control of the stormwater.
Exactly.
And we're asking you to also improve the condition of the eroding bank.
Mhm.
But those are all improvements, so.
Right, that's a good idea.
Okay.
All right, so then with the assent of the applicant, we'll continue this until the 15th of September? And
Right.
we will expect the plan in by the 2nd of September?
Okay. And then a meeting the following Saturday? Is that the site
The
walk?
The 15th, and then the site walk will be the following Saturday.
Okay.
Right, so we'll go Tuesday, Saturday. All right, anything else, Kathy?
Just that you're voting, you're gonna issue a positive, a negative determination.
Negative, right,
And you're gonna make them file a notice of intent.
correct.
So that has to be done before the next meeting, just so you,
Sure.
it's not a continuation of this meeting with.
Oh, yeah,
The
you're
reason-
right, you're right.
You're
I'm
right,
sorry,
yes,
yeah,
of
that's correct.
course.
So we do actually have to have a vote on this.
That's right.
So I'd entertain a motion, if I'm judging the consensus correctly, that this would be a positive determination, that in fact, a notice of intent is required.
Correct.
So moved? Yes?
Yes.
I'm just thinking whether the positive determination is right or it's a negative determination that it's a notice of a RDA, but forget it, so, yes.
Yeah, it is a little counterintuitive,
It
but
is.
to get to the next, to get to the notice of intent, you have to say it's a positive. It is going to affect the wetlands,
Right.
and therefore, a notice of intent is required.
Okay.
All right, so that's moved, seconded? Any discussion after the, who seconded it? You did, okay, thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay. So we'll see you on the 15th, but we'll hear from you by the 2nd.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much,
Thank
Matt.
Do you want the photos, or,
Oh, yeah.
did you want the photos?
Yeah, well, those are our photos.
Oh, sorry, those are.
Yeah, you need these for the file? Yeah,
I
great.
can reprint them if he wants to take them to show
You need them, Matt?
We have other copies.
That's fine. I think you get copies.
Okay.
Good. All right, perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is number 6, which is request for a certificate of compliance, Lot 3, Gun Hill Street. Do we have anybody coming in on that?
I thought there was. They sent an email requesting to come in, but they want to talk to it. It was informational.
Informational. No, this is Lot 3 that I thought we,
Oh, no, Lot 3.
Lot
no,
3 is
no.
okay.
That's okay. We have the letter from Jim Burke.
from Jim Burke. And so the public knows what we're talking about. This Lot 3 certificate of compliance, that's Lot 3 on Gun Hill Road, that was actually on our agenda at the Milton Conservation Commission meeting on Saturday. And we did have I guess, a consensus that the certificate would be approved because they did make some changes on the back part of the property. It's on a very steep slope, and we were concerned that the sedimentation would deteriorate the slope over a short period of time. And they actually took out, they changed the elevation from the manicured lawn and put in some riprap in the significant areas of deterioration. And so I think we're pretty comfortable with approving that certificate of compliance.
And they're going to plant the 6
They're planting 6.
native
Yes,
plants.
yeah, and that's, and sorry,
native
that's
shrubs.
in the letter. So
Yes.
the letter from Jim Berg says that it is in substantial compliance with the order of conditions, as it has to be in order to get the certificate of compliance. And in addition, at the suggestion of Judith, they will plant 6
Native shrubs.
6 native shrubs along the lawn edge toward the rear of the property. And that's to assist in erosion control. So with those changes that we have here, can we take a formal vote, or did we already take the formal
Thought we
vote?
already did.
Well,
We did.
We did.
Okay.
All right,
Contingent on the letter.
Right,
did you on the letter? So here we are.
so we're done.
So the vote's already taken.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That's. All right, next on the agenda is Carberry Lane. You know something? I just shifted agendas. We've got
You're
2.
going between the two of them, yeah.
I'm going to get back to my original agenda. Which is here. Next on the agenda is certificate of compliance for 6 Carberry Lane. And I think we're in the same position. This also is on the agenda for Saturday, and we did a site walk.
Just inspection. It wasn't a public. You're going to vote on it Saturday.
Correct.
Okay. So that was the 6 Carberry Lane was the installation of a pool and basically a restructuring of the landscape in the back. We checked the property with respect to the order of conditions and found it to be in substantial compliance with our order. And we have a letter from the engineer, the professional engineer, stamping, certifying that it is in substantial compliance with our order of conditions. And do we have any other contingencies?
We had the letter, we do have a letter from the neighbor saying that the noise was a non-significant issue, so no modification of the screen fence is required.
Fair enough. All right, so that we now have to take a vote on that as to whether or not to issue the certificate of compliance. Is it moved?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any comments, anyway, from abutters? Seeing none? All in favor? None. All right, and you're abstaining, Ingrid?
I can't vote because I wasn't on the site.
Right, okay. right, next on the agenda is order of conditions extension and informational meeting with respect to 153, 155, and 157 Hillside Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Lenore White. I'm a professional wetland scientist with Wetland Strategies in Plymouth. And the applicant, Todd Hamilton, asked me to come before you tonight just to discuss the order of conditions that was issued for a driveway. If you folks remember, some of you were on the commission back then in 2012, December, we looked at the properties on 153, 155, and 157 Hillside, and the applicant had proposed an extension of a driveway down into the woods down there. And the commission did grant an approval and issued an order of conditions to that effect with some conditions. So normally, orders of conditions are good for 3 years. That's what it says right in the body of the order. But then we had this funky Permit Extension Act that was issued by then Governor Patrick. And when it was issued for 2 years. And then he extended it for another 2 years. So there's new guidance, well, it's not new anymore, but when that second extension was issued, there was a guidance document put out by the government. And it talks about how agencies that issue any kind of approval should look at it. And I just wanted to clarify your position on that extension and what the new expiration date of this order would be. By my read of this frequently asked questions, which was updated September 18, 2012, it says in part, with limited exception, the Act, the Permit Extension Act, automatically extends for 4 years beyond its otherwise applicable expiration date any permit or approval that was in effect or existence during the qualifying period beginning on August 15, 2008, and extending through August 15, 2012. So this order was issued in December of 2012. Does that fall into this?
No. I think you have to go back to our pre-existing protocol, which was simply apply for an extension, and we have the authority to grant it.
Okay.
So I think,
Okay.
I think that's the appropriate course.
Okay.
Because I recognize and I applaud you for bringing to our attention the limitation, because I've got the same
Okay.
frequently asked questions in my head.
Yes, I sent it to Kathy when I requested that.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing that.
No problem.
So I'm sort of a strict constructionist, and August is August.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was issued, what's the date?
This is December.
December 12th.
December 12th.
December 12th was the date?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So I think you're outside of that, but
Yeah.
that's not to say we would not entertain just a typical one. Because I understand that, you've got another few months to go, but that's
Right.
not sufficient for to put in the driveway.
That's
So
right.
I think it would be within our normal protocol to entertain a motion to extend, motion to extend.
Okay, if you're willing to do that, I mean, normally there is an application process, but if you're willing to do that tonight, I'd be willing to.
Oh, I wouldn't be willing to do it.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think we should follow
Okay.
the normal protocol, because that
Okay,
was our
that's fine.
protocol before the Extension
Yep.
Act.
And so the regulations say within 30 days prior to the expiration, so the expiration then would be November 12th of this year. So it's provided you got that request prior to November, you would entertain that?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it November or December?
A month before would be
That's a month.
November,
Okay,
Right.
before November 12th.
okay.
There's nothing in your bylaw that says anything different from the state act
Not
about
that I'm aware of.
extensions? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. That's one issue. The other issue is that, as you may recall, when we were looking at that driveway, we were concerned with the stream, and because it was identified as a perennial stream on the USGS map, we followed the regulations and said, well, it's perennial. So it has a 200-foot riverfront area. That was at the time when we got that approval for the driveway. Since then, there's been a number of neighbors who have come forward and sent in letters saying, that stream dries up. And the applicant has actually gone out there on several occasions in 2014 and photographed it dry. And I understand he's since been back there more recently in 2015 and also has photographs of it dry. So I'm curious as to how to best approach the commission about possibly considering changing the status of that stream from perennial to intermittent.
I'd ask you to, yeah, we're in a drought, or we were certainly in 2014.
But the drought didn't start till October 1st.
We just need to see the dates to be able to.
Right. The drought in
Property.
2014 was October 1 through December something, and then we got all that snowfall. This year, there hasn't been any. So these photographs were taken in September and August.
Appropriate times.
Appropriate times, right. So these photographs aren't great copies of it, but I'll leave them with you. I just have to do they printed too dark.
Yeah.
But they do show it dry. And we do have some abutters stating that. But what would be the protocol for approaching you folks about considering changing that status?
Would be to ask first, do you need to change the status? And because we're always, we're pretty protective of the stream status. And sometimes applicants can get by without attempting to change the stream status. Because there is a presumption that you have to overcome.
Right.
Because of the USGS designation. Is it necessary? And I don't know whether or not the plans that you're going to put forward require a 100-foot as opposed to a 200-foot, because it's only jurisdictional. Our biggest concern, and that which we try to be uniform in application, is a 25-foot non-disturbance zone.
Right.
And just as an example, on 31 Elliott Street, that's probably 99.4% within the riverfront.
Yep.
But there's a project going in there. So it's not a not a prohibition.
No, but the regulations say within the first 100 feet, no touch. That's what the riverfront standard says. Within the second 100 feet, you can alter 10% of 5,000 square feet. So it severely limits what you can do in 200-foot riverfront area, if it's a perennial stream. But if it's not a perennial stream, then none of those restrictions apply. So when developers are looking at projects, they need to know, okay, am I gonna have to live with this standard or not? And so I'm thinking the way to do that maybe is to come in with a request for determination that says, look, it shows as a perennial stream, however, we have the evidence in accordance with the regulation. We'd like a determination that it's intermittent, so that then when the developer sort of plans his project, he knows what the constraints are, and he knows that he either has to deal with the riverfront area or he doesn't. And that can make a big difference in where he locates houses, structures, whatever. So that's, I guess, the issue.
I understand that, and I was probably asking for some reverse engineering, that if there was a plan that the developer thought would work, and it didn't infringe upon the riverfront, and I don't disagree with what you just said.
Right.
Then there's no need to fight the good fight. But again, that's sort of a reverse engineering approach.
Right.
And I do understand that, but I have no idea, how many lots, how many houses, where they're properly located. If the developer had an idea, or the architect, and said, I want to put it here or there, and it didn't infringe upon the first 100 feet, then it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah, but it does make a difference, because in the second, the outer riparian area, they used to call it, you're limited. You only get 10%. So it severely constrains a developer's ability to know what's buildable and what isn't, because of those limitations. So that's why, it's much like an ANRAD. When the boundary of the wetland is set, then the developer knows, okay, here's, so it's the same sort of thought process. Okay, do I have this riverfront area or don't I? Because that makes a difference in how I proceed with the plans. And I'm thinking, I don't know, I think the request for determination process might be the way to go, but that was a question that I wanted to pose to you folks.
Okay. Well, you certainly have the right to challenge the presumptive perennial stream. And we're open and we'll act
Okay.
in good faith.
Okay.
It's a,
Yeah, I mean, the other way to
There's
do it
people
would be to
that-
come in with a project,
One way to find out.
yeah.
right, right, and bring in the pictures and the photographs. You know, the regs say that if it shows as perennial, you must overcome it by 4 photographs within a calendar year showing the stream dry. So that's the criteria in the regulations. So we would have to come forward with that criteria, and hopefully you would consider that in light of the regulations and issue a finding, but that's,
What about an issue that I have heard people talk about, and that is that it runs at certain times of the day because of a sort of a release of
Yeah,
water
yeah.
into it. So I don't know if it's dry, is it dry all day, or is it certain times of the, because what I've heard is that at certain times of the day, it runs.
that's right.
And that does complicate.
Well, it does, but if there are certain times of the day when it's dry, then, and you can document that over the period of 4 days, then that meets the regulations, in my mind. Because if it's dry, it's dry.
And if it's wet, it's wet. You know, if it's wet from noon to midnight, and it's dry from midnight to noon, I don't know what DEP would say about that. I don't have a clue.
I think they would look to the regulations and say, look, you've got photographs of it dry. If it dries up, unless, you know, the regulations do say that if there is a water withdrawal up, you know, up gradient and/or a dam that people could manipulate, you know, sometimes you have these sluice boards that people can put in. If that situation exists upstream, then DEP would say, well, you know, anybody can put the sluice boards in and it's dry. But I don't think that's the situation here.
You know, I
So-
think we'd do better to have this discussion once you have everything in front of us and once you filed your RDA or whatever.
So
And
that's the process you would recommend?
that would make more sense.
Okay, that's really what I was curious about, how best to do that.
So what's the scenario, what is the hydrology that's occurring that would make it run periodically or consistently on a regular basis during the day? That just astounds me.
I don't have any scientific proof, but I'll tell you, it's more than just a rumor that there is a discharge of water from one of the
Nurseries,
nurseries.
right.
Oh, so it's a release of water.
It's not natural.
It's not natural.
Right. Apparently,
It goes through the earth and it comes back up again somewhere else. I don't know that it's sheet flow. I don't know where the water is going at the nursery, but that's, and again, I have no objective proof of that,
Right,
but
right.
I've certainly, a lot of people have certainly talked about it.
right, right. That's my understanding too, that there's a nursery that's located up gradient, they water during the night.
Oh, and then you get
It
the
flows into
flow
the
through.
storm drain system, which then at some point enters the creek. So in the morning, it's flowing because the water has made its way down, and
It
then it
drains
dries
down
up.
and then you're done.
Right, right. That's my understanding as well, but I haven't seen it, I don't have any evidence of that, but
Right.
that being, if that's the case, okay, then we don't have any natural flow.
Right,
Right.
that's an
That's-
artificially induced
Right.
scenario.
Right. And it doesn't sound perennial.
Okay,
Right, but that,
It's worth the
that's
discussion.
something that, you're right, it is worthy of
Worth the
discussion.
discussion.
And it's something that we need to,
Yep.
you know, we need to get some objective facts as to, you know, what
Not
the
just
level of
theoretical.
discharge is.
yeah, well, it's not theoretical, but, you know, theory is one thing, but
So, let me ask
rumor
this.
is different,
Theoretically,
theoretically.
the area above where the discharge occurs into the stream is dry.
Well, all I can tell you is the photographs taken at the culvert are dry. I looked at the GIS maps, there's no water supply up there because it goes into the Blue Hills, so it's not a water supply. I've looked for, you know, impoundments or something that would, you know, create a damming situation. There's no evidence of that. Whether there's any flow up there at some point, I haven't walked up the stream bed, but at this culvert, it's dry.
Again, I'm not comfortable with this discussion because, again, we don't have anyone in the audience who might be, you know, affected by this. It's a.
Oh, this is not decision-making,
No,
this
but-
is informational
But even
only.
so, even. in
This is
terms-
fair.
This is fair.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
gathering
It's
information.
And they're
information.
not, you're not in front of us asking for a determination at this time. We're theoretically talking about a situation, and they're gonna, you're gonna present, and we'll have this, a formal discussion later.
Absolutely, that's
Right.
the way it's done.
Right.
That's the way we intend to do it. But I just wanted to
Sure.
talk to you about it, and it's like, there is a conundrum here, so that sounds like a fair way to do it, though.
Yeah.
There is.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Kathy, for putting me on the agenda. I know it's been a late night, and you've done a lot of good work tonight.
This is early.
This is early.
We're on a roll. We can set a record
We've
tonight.
we've got better records. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your time. Onward and upward.
This one is, number 9 on the agenda is,
Good night.
thank you.
Good night now.
This is an order of conditions extension for Lot 1, Gun Hill Street. And for the benefit of the public, we were on Gun Hill Street on Saturday and had an opportunity to look at Lot 1. And the date of that order of conditions, do you know that one offhand?
He does not fall under the act.
He does not.
No, he's only asking for a one-year extension,
Oh, okay.
2016. His email is there on,
Yeah, it's in the packet. I think it was 2016.
I've got Lot 3. Does anybody, can anybody put their hand on
No, I
Lot 1?
didn't see Lot 1, I saw Lot 3.
Lot 3 is
Yeah,
in our
Lot three is
packet.
in.
Yeah, I don't remember Lot 1 in the materials.
we have to sign it according to lot 1.
I see it.
Unless I misplaced it.
I was thinking of something completely different. Oh, it was lot 1 that I was remembering. Yeah, it wasn't lot 3.
Got it?
Yeah, it was lot 1.
Here it is,
Here it is. Do you have it?
right here, and that's
Lot
the
3.
comment.
That's lot 1, right there.
Got it.
And then the next one's my good, not here.
11/30/16.
And this is, they do fall into
What's the
that.
basis of not approving
Originally
an
was in
extension?
July. That's a Fletcher steel,
Okay.
okay?
Good question.
But they have
I
to be.
don't, I mean,
Unless
they-
there's
they-
statutory
I'm just not
limitation.
sure if that's
Wait, I
2019
mean-
It's at our
or
discretion, I think.
2018.
yeah.
Unless there's statutory,
On
I
the,
have to look at the folder.
you know,
Of-
oh,
she
okay.
would say,
Right.
is there
So it's 4 years
Is
from
there-
the
Issue
time
date.
limit
The
that-
issue
after
date.
which you cannot?
Right, but
Okay.
under normal circumstances like this,
Okay.
there's no basis for not
Discretion.
providing, yeah.
Yeah.
There's-
Okay, this is Lot 1.
Unless we want to reevaluate it.
On Gun Hill Street.
Lot 1 on Gun Hill Street. And the applicant, who is Tom Corcoran, said, "Dear Kathy, I'm writing to request that the order of conditions issued for Lot 1, 135 Gun Hill Street be extended for 1 year. The order is due to expire on 11/30/15. I would like to extend until 11/30/16. I expect to begin construction this coming fall. Please let me know if there's anything else you need from me." So he also falls outside of the end date of August of 2012. So just as we indicated to a prior applicant, this looks like a request for a 1-year extension. And we did have an opportunity to view the site. There was a 4-lot division. Only 3 of them were actually within our jurisdiction.
Right.
But this particular one is in our jurisdiction. And I see no reason not to grant the extension. I think they've gone forward at an appropriate pace, and I think they've done good work that we've seen.
Yes, but I'll counter that with the discussion that we had on site concerning the the lack of invasive removal, and whether or not we should discuss expanding the order of conditions to include invasive removal on the slope, which is the thing that we were talking about on site
Right.
because of the clearing.
Yes.
I just asked Ingrid about, well, what's the basis of not providing an extension? And, I mean, this is pretty straightforward in terms of being fair and appropriate. I think that we should. But at the same time, this is an opportunity to expand on something that we've discussed on site.
That's a fair comment, but what are you talking about? Removal of invasive species where?
No, so we, on the site, on the building, on lot number 2, right? That's the one, no, 3. The one that we just reviewed was lot number 3. And
Right,
the
yeah.
concern was the removal of the trees opened up the site for sunlight, opened up the site for rain, and therefore accelerated the growth of the invasives at the perimeter of the buildable area, the limit of work.
Understood.
And the concern that we had, or the concern that we have, was that in discussions about the removal of those trees, we may not have fully understood at that time the implication of that additional light and water is going to have on the growth of the invasives.
The consequence of
The
of
consequences,
that,
yeah. So the question is this an opportunity to expand the order of conditions to include removal of invasives? And that gets into a discussion of, well, how do you do that without destroying the slope? But is that something that we would want to entertain? Which would mean that we would deny the extension, which would be a burden, but I think is worth a discussion in terms of, with the developer, to say, this is a condition that we think that his project has reset our perspective on this issue. And if he is amenable to expanding the removal of invasives, but we need to agree collectively the best, an appropriate way to do that. Maybe he would be willing to come in and talk about it.
Because
Yeah, I think he probably would be,
Yeah.
because I think it's a little bit awkward for us to amend it. We have the right to do that, because we have a right to deny the extension.
I
And
don't.
I think we could modify it, but I believe he should be here.
I agree, and I, on one hand, we've already granted the order of conditions, and I kind of feel that this is a little bit backhanded.
But I think it ties into
but-
his whole project
Right.
of all those houses. And Ingrid, you weren't there at the site walk, but we saw so clearly that because all of the trees were taken out, and all of a sudden there's bright sunlight there, plus he has sprinklers, of course. He has, beautiful lawn and the sprinklers going. So all that extra water, the invasives have just blossomed down that slope. They were there to
Like what?
begin with.
Like what?
Catbrier, I can't even remember, there are 2 or 3 other ones that are so
The
thick.
bittersweet thing?
Bittersweet is there like crazy, the Oriental bittersweet. And so it does seem as though this is a good time for us as a
Right.
commission to think about what are the anticipated consequences of this kind of clearing on this kind of a scale. But in fairness to Mr. Corcoran, to talk to him about it. And I agree with you.
I'm not sure that I'm not sure what the solution is for removal, because
Yeah.
you can't just remove it because you're going to destabilize the slope.
Right.
So
You had to
You're
remove
not gonna
and
get any
plant
root
and
mass.
plant.
He's going to get a what?
Root mass,
you're not going to get the root mass. You don't want to get the root mass.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
because that would be further erosion.
But
But I'd
leaving the
like
root
to-
mass just
One
perpetuates it.
observation,
Right, unless you do cut and paint with the.
But does that kill the root mass? No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does over time.
or
It
you
does over
chemically
time.
kill it.
Yeah, you don't
If
want to
do
use
that,
too
then
much
what
of
holds,
that.
what holds the slope?
That's,
Well, you have to
Right,
replant
that's
within
the-
that.
That's
But if
the
you
thing.
replant and you've got, 10 gallons of Roundup or napalm or whatever's going to get the root mass out, how does something then grow?
Well, I think what we need is some expert advice. Maybe we should have someone come in, to talk to us about what would be the best practices right now in terms of how to replant a slope like that.
well,
How to clear.
control invasives.
What's
And-
a grade of
The
the
larger.
slope? Is it,
It's extreme.
It's extreme.
It's very extreme.
really?
Yeah.
It would seem that this might be, at least to me, and I could be wrong again, that it would be good to look at this after the fill that we walked up as we moved. As I was at the peak and looking down at the invasives, I didn't see, and it could be my eyes, a major difference between the invasives that were at the bottom of that fill and the invasives that we saw on the other lot.
What do you mean?
Similar, in terms of magnitude,
Density.
size, density, et cetera. They seemed at least, but that was at a greater distance. They seemed almost equally
I know what you mean.
pervasive.
Or
But it's
it
all
didn't
cleared.
seem as
All the
bad.
all the trees have come down.
Yeah.
That's
They've
right.
already cleared the site.
I understand.
Yeah.
But there's not this infusion of water that you get on the next lawn. I mean, that irrigation is pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
But what irrigation is he gonna put in lot one? That would be a question.
So I think in fairness, it would be good to have Tom
Corcoran
Corcoran
here.
come in front of us.
Oh,
And
can't
he
do it
could,
without
maybe he could suggest a way of dealing with this. Because if we're asking for it, I bet other commissions are dealing with it too, to see what should we be doing in the future for this type of development. So in a way, he should know as well that he might be asked to do this more and more. So I think we should give him the extension with modification and give him an
It's a
opportunity
job for all
to
those
speak.
rocks that we saw.
What's that?
It's a good rock, yeah, good, yeah. You can pull the rocks down the slope.
Yeah, right. Line the stream.
The rock farm.
All right, so you want to table this until September 15th?
Yes,
And that doesn't put him under the gun, does it? I mean, it
No.
doesn't.
I don't
it-
think
He's
so.
not, you
No,
said
because
his
his date is
11.
11/30/15.
and I think he knows by, open discussion that I'm very much in favor of giving him the extension. We just need to deal with this issue.
But let
And
him
have
know
Yes.
beforehand what our conversation is going to
What
be
our
about,
concern-
so that
yes.
he's not surprised when he comes in.
Right.
Kathy, can you talk to him?
Yes, I will.
All right, thank you.
Is
He
that-
won't be surprised. He might
You're-
not like it, but,
Your feeling is that that's not, that's appropriate?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I'm not uncomfortable with that because we don't have to extend it. And,
Right.
we could request a new notice of intent, but that would be
That just
form
seems
over
excessive,
substance.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So I think that most of the time we can work out a sort of a compromise.
Right.
Where everybody walks away happy and everyone declares victory.
Right.
That's the idea.
That's the-
And I think there's a path of least resistance here that we can take and
Okay.
work with him.
Plus, we have precedence in the abutting property.
What?
We have precedent in how we've treated the abutting property.
Correct.
Or how far we didn't go.
Yeah,
Pardon?
How far
How far we
we
didn't
didn't
go.
go.
right.
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 Yeah, we really couldn't change that order of
After the
conditions.
fact,
After
yeah.
the fact. He didn't need an extension. And I'm not trying to use a technical, it's not a default, but a technical issue as leverage. But I think that just as he agreed, he didn't have to agree to the 6 shrubs that
Yeah,
he
he
put in.
did.
Because it's not part of our order of conditions, but he did. And you can live with it, and maybe we can come up with something similarly acceptable.
Right.
So, we'll remain user-friendly.
Yes.
All right. All right, any other thoughts on this one other than continuing it until September 15th? All right, and then Kathy, you'll talk to him
Yes, I will.
and convey the sentiment that
Yes.
we're not trying to make him jump through hoops, we're honestly trying to work out a better mechanism for maintaining that slope.
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is, that was number,
7.
depends on which agenda you're
Oh,
looking
I
at.
think-
Yeah.
There are 2. I think
Okay.
it's 9. So 10 is order of conditions extension at Houghton's Pond. And there's no one here for that extension. That's the aquatic control. And I tip my hat to Kathy because she actually did some good work in looking at this. This is the aquatic control.
Did they ever do that?
They did. And
Okay.
it's a program. And my first question was, when we issued the order of conditions, I don't know, 3 years ago, was it for one application of the herbicide that they put into the water to get the algae out of it?
Right.
Or was it a program? And Kathy looked at it and said, it's a program for that period of time. They're now looking for an extension under the same Extension Act. They do fit within the date parameters, but they do not fit within the DEP guidance, which is, it suggests, this is part of the frequently asked questions
Okay.
that Lenore White just talked about. It's in there as well, and I'll show you the section. And it says that the Extension Act is designed for buildings and structures. And I'll read to you, and this is the Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP Q&A on the Permit Extension Act. which is Section 173 of Chapter 240 of the Acts of 2010, amended Chapter 238 of the Acts of 2012. And this is the one that's effective for permits through August of 2012. So it does fit within the time parameters, but it says, here's the question, aquatic nuisance control. The question is, does the act apply to aquatic nuisance control licenses and superseding orders of conditions for aquatic nuisance control? The answer is no. Although these concern the use of real property, they are not directly related to the use of buildings and structures on real property, in accordance with the November 2010 frequently asked questions issued by the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. Now, I recognize that I referenced the 2010 Act, but this is part of the issuance for both 2010 and 2012. So DEP guidance suggests that the Extension Act is not applicable to aquatic control. There are two ways they could do it. They could file another one, or they could come in and ask for a one-year extension.
The program goes until 2016.
Anyway,
Anyways, it went from 2012 to 2016.
And they're looking for an extension to go,
Under the act for another 4 years.
but they
From
don't
now.
apply for the act.
They thought they were
no,
going to
it's
get it
automatic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, but
automatic,
it's
if it
not-
applies.
It says right there, it does
doesn't
not
apply.
It doesn't
Yeah.
apply.
If
Okay,
it
so-
applies, it's automatic.
Okay, but it doesn't apply, so
They're
therefore.
thinking it does apply, and they're mistaken.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
so I guess my concern is that I'm not opposed to the extension, but I want them to come in and tell us how effective it's been.
I feel the same way.
I'm not opposed, if they come in and they tell us it's been effective, and I'm not opposed to it at all, and we'll give them the extension. But right now, I don't have any information I don't want to approve
Feel the
something
same
that
way.
isn't effective.
Good point.
Okay.
And now they're in existence until, that is, the permit's in existence until when? I know you said 16, but does that include the summer months?
Yes, the program goes to 2016.
Okay.
I don't have the dates there when it was issued, but they,
Yeah, but they can come
had to be
in,
in 12. But once
Hillside's,
they can come in at their convenience between now and then.
it was issued 5/15/2012. So that'll go until 5/15/2016.
Right.
All right, so it's actually before the summer. That's probably when they do it anyway. But why don't we give them notification to come in and tell us,
God
just
bless
as
you.
Mike suggested. Tell them we don't think it's, the Extension Act is applicable to them according to the DEP guidance. And secondly, that we'd be interested to find out the effectiveness of what they've been doing. And put them on for, if they'd be willing to come in on September 15th.
Would you think they would want to come?
They can come later if
Whenever
they
they want.
want.
They can
whenever
come
they want.
anytime.
Yeah, I mean, they would just need to file an extension like
Anybody else?
Normally.
Tom Parkland saying we'd like to extend it for
Correct.
a year. Yeah. Okay, I'll let them know that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Now, why do I not see Houghton's Pond? That's number 10. We've got different ones here.
I know.
Fletcher Steel
All right.
Way.
Fletcher Steel Way. How did that get dropped on the 2nd? That's the 8th. This
Did
is
we
the 11th.
already okay that on the sidewalk? It was one of the.
We didn't do the
You never
sidewalk.
vo-
Oh, that's
yeah.
right, we didn't
Well,
go.
you just have to prove it. They do fall under the
They
act.
fall under the
All right,
automatic.
so that's an automatic
Very
That's
good.
extension.
an
Okay.
automatic. But they
Green.
did do the courtesy of filing with us. to say.
Okay.
And then Green Mountain Realty.
Green Mountain Realty was on the agenda for
No, hold on,
Saturday.
hold on. Let's finish Fletcher Steel Way. So they have the automatic extension, we're done. Okay.
Right, so we don't need to vote
I'm
on
sorry,
that
go on.
automatically.
We don't need to vote.
Correct.
Very good.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So, Green Mountain Realty.
Green Mountain Realty was on the agenda on Saturday, and we discussed it, and the consensus was that they have a right to a permit per the District Court of the United States. Judge Reyes Obel has
Right.
basically ordered us to sign the permit, which we did do. And the applicant came back, which is Green Mountain Realty, they came back and said, listen, we need to change the order of conditions. The reason is we have to put per Mass Highway we have to put down a temporary staging area, which is going to increase the amount of temporary alterations. And it actually skyrockets. It goes up to 6,000 square feet, which initially seemed like a significant change. And under normal circumstances, without a federal court order, we would ask for, well, we'd have to make a decision.
Oh, sorry.
We'd have to make a decision as to whether or not it's a significant change, which would require a new notice of intent, or an insignificant change, which would allow a revision or modification of the order of conditions. So I talked to, not their wetland scientist, but their real estate advisor, Peter Cook, and I asked him to explain it, and he's now explained it in the email that we received. And essentially it's a net benefit to us, because although it spikes in terms of temporary alteration, it actually, when remediated, that is, when the gravel is removed, it's going to be reseeded with a wetlands mix, and we've asked for a wetland mix, wetland mix that we discussed on Saturday. I talked to Peter Cook today, and he said that should not be a problem. So we actually have a reduction in the permanently altered land, and the footprint for the tower, because it's 120 instead of 140, is actually smaller. And initially, back in 2009, we had 109 square feet of permanently altered wetlands, not buffer zone, but wetlands. That's been removed, so there's no impingement upon the wetlands now. So they pull that back, and then there's a reduction in permanent alteration, although an increase in temporary alteration. And then further, they're putting in a plunge pool, which will allow us to have a better quality of water that's being discharged ultimately. So I think it's a net benefit.
Sounds that way, yeah.
It almost sounds like an alternative analysis that you've been looking for all this time. Seems like, well, on the other hand, we could do this.
Yeah, why didn't we do that before? Quick question. So the 6,000 square feet of temporary staging area that they're putting in is outside of the wetland?
No, it's inside.
Okay.
It's inside.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's in the riverfront area, it's not in the wetland.
It's in the riverfront area, but it's
Sorry.
not in the wetland, right?
Correct.
Nothing is in the wetland.
Correct,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, where I was going was, do they need to put down a structural fabric before they put the gravel down to facilitate the removal of the gravel without destroying the site?
Legitimate question, I don't know the answer. I did not ask that.
Okay, well, that would be the only question I have. I mean, everything sounds like it's to our benefit. And then my only question is making sure that when they remove the gravel, they don't pretty much destroy everything. And if they put down a fabric first, then they should be able to use the fabric to remove, in helping them remove the gravel.
It sounds like it would be an easier remediation
Yeah.
technique.
Could you speak to Peter Cook about that, John?
I will,
To see. Great.
I will. And so that the public is aware, we are under a federal court order, and the order says basically, you shall have no hearings, no discussion, you shall sign the order. But in deference to the state law.
Thank you, Judge Zobel.
In deference to the state law that requires open and public meetings, we had a hearing anyway, and then signed the order.
So you're gonna substitute the page, or you're gonna re-sign it?
I think we should re-sign it,
Okay.
all right? And the substituted page will reflect the new plans that have been given to Kathy by Peter. And that does show the plunge pool, the fact that there's no impingement on the wetlands itself. And it shows the temporary staging area. And then Peter said that he talked to his biology guy today and get the wetland seed. He didn't see a problem with the wetland seed.
Okay.
So Kathy, will you make sure that goes into the revised order, the new
Yes.
page? Perfect. Any other comments or suggestions? To the extent, I guess it does require a vote. So,
Does it?
well, what we're finding is, it would be a motion to approve this as a revised order of conditions. So essentially, we're saying it's insignificant. You may not look at it in terms of numbers, but in net result and net benefit, it's actually
I
insignificant.
thought you were gonna view it as a minor modification,
It is.
rather than amendment.
Correct, you are correct, that it is a minor modification, because the minor modification is the term of art that eliminates the second notice of intent.
Good thing Kathy's here to keep
It
us.
is.
Are we allowed to vote no?
I
I don't think we are.
See you in jail.
Yeah, you're too old.
Contemporary.
Look good in orange suit.
I'm just asking the question.
So, then the motion should be to allow a minor modification, to allow this temporary staging area and plunge pool, and removal of any impingement on the wetlands.
I don't think we should use the term allow. We should say, you know, we support or something. Otherwise, the judge might yell at us, you know.
All right.
You said allow
We will
anyway.
agree. Motion to agree.
Motion to agree. We agree.
All right. Motion made? Yes.
So moved.
Seconded? Done? All right, all in favor? Done.
All
Okay.
opposed?
Okay, I was laughing. Is that turned off?
No.
No.
It's not turned on. Now, do we have any other additional business?
Nope, that's it.
That's it? All right.
Oh, other than if you want to discuss the letter from Paul.
Oh, yeah, such a nice letter. Remember? The young man who had thrown the trash in the
Oh, right.
wetland area. So this is his second letter that we asked him to send in. And now he's
Is this
really,
the one who said my little brother did it?
yes, but this is the little brother who,
This is the little.
well, now he's talking about reducing his carbon footprint and being involved in awareness of ecology and building a compost pile in his backyard. And
Perfect.
I think we've ignited some sort of
Yeah.
passion here.
Passion
It
for
sounds very
conservation, I
good.
love
So
it.
we may think about doing this a little bit more, you know.
Hey, you want to
particularly
recruit him for one of the
younger
vacancies?
people. Maybe clear up the back of Winter Valley or something.
There you go.
Okay.
That's
So-
good.
That's it.
That's it? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Adjourned.